And I'm super happy she's here. She's the Queen of Cable. Bonnie Hammer joins us. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. Queen of Cable was a label from a while ago, but I'll accept it.
I think once the Queen of Cable, always the Queen of Cable. And as a guy who just finished Suits, I know I was late to that party and it took me forever to get through it. I cried the last 3 episodes. I have to ask you, was there a series during your career, Bonnie, where you're like, there's no way in hell this is going to ever get made? It went through all kinds of iterations, and then the end result was maybe better than anybody could have ever expected?
Suits was, in fact, one of those series.
Was it really?
When I first got the scripts through my development people, it was the time where Boston Legal was on. LA Law was kind of long gone, but it was still resonating in the world. And we read a pretty well-written script by Aaron Korish, but it just felt like the law world was old. So we basically rejected it. And we said to Aaron, I said, you know something? Do something on Wall Street, but we can't do another law show. So it took him a while to come up with another version, similar characters down in Wall Street, and it was boring as hell because you couldn't play the same games on Wall Street as you can with the legal crazies that are going on. So we said, all right, try it again. So now we're about a year and a half past when we first rejected the show. And we said 2 changes. One is we want a woman to lead this show. And the other was just give us a dollop of sarcasm or humor. Don't make it straight and don't make it only about the law. Make it more about the characters. He took it to a place that we never expected. When we got back that script, that was it. We greenlit it and we went. And it did amazingly well on USA. We had it on for 9 seasons and it was the #1 show in cable. It had a lot of pluses, but nowhere near the exposure till Netflix took it on. And the resurgence, you're not the only one who found it at this later date. My kid watched it for the first time. You know, I would talk about it for years, but he didn't even watch it till recently. So it's one of those shows that, are enduring because the characters are really interesting. They're not predictable. They're imperfect. And there's a nice dollop of sarcasm.
Boy, and the strong women in that show, to your point, not just, he didn't give you one strong woman. I'm thinking of 3 strong women as leads in that show.
Yeah. And we knew Jessica, we knew that she would have a presence. She's a beautiful, tall woman. Gina Perez is an amazing human. But Sarah Rafferty, who played Harvey's assistant, was amazing. And Megan, if you think about her role in all of this before Megan was Megan.
Yeah, Donna and Rachel, just very strong characters. Yeah. All 3 of them. That show for me was quite a roller coaster. You actually decided on this project, 15 Lies Women Are Told at Work, on a roller coaster?
I kid you not, that wasn't just for color for the book. We were at every year, NBCU would take their senior executives and we would do an offsite. And more often than not, we would end up in either LA at the Universal Park or in Orlando. So we were in Orlando and we were all kind of sitting around having cocktails. And this guy, Jimmy Horowitz, who I adore, who heads up all of the deal making for the film side, basically dared me to go on the roller coaster. And I do not like roller coasters. I have a little bit of fear of being upside down and thousands of feet up, but I'm also not good about dares. You dare me and you better believe I'm going to take that dare. I don't know what it is. Some ego crazy things that some shrink would love. But so I did it and I was petrified. They give out pictures, by the way, when you get off of it.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And you're upside down. I looked like completely freaked out. My hair was up in the air and I was so red in the cheeks. It was crazy. But the truth was, when I was upside down in this thing, I realized I was one of the few chicks that was on this ride. It was all filled with guys laughing and screaming and smiling. And granted, I know a lot of people, not just women, a lot of people fear these rides. But I realized one of the main reasons had nothing to do with the fear. It had to do with really being afraid of mixing work and play, and in a sense, not being taken seriously. If you came off a ride the way I looked, you would be a mess for the rest of the cocktail session that was going on. And I think there was a genuine fear of not being taken seriously. So then I just started thinking of all the cliches that we've been led to believe that really get in the way of women succeeding, basically sabotage women and sabotage a lot of people, not just women, guys too. But for me, I was looking at those women and what were the cliches or other pieces of bad advice that we've been told that will get in the way of succeeding. And that's where it started.
That's wild. And it's funny, to your point, I would think just as a guy, I wouldn't have any second thought about getting on the roller coaster, but I can imagine all the women I've worked with through the years, many of them would go, yeah, I can't do that. Like, there's no way anybody's going to take me seriously. It's funny though, you also mentioned you've been surprised by this project that there are, and you said this just a minute ago, Bonnie, there's many men who found this advice relevant as well.
It was shocking to me. To be honest, when I first wrote it, I wanted to do 15 lies we are told at work. But Simon & Schuster being marketers and booksellers, they wanted it targeted, focused, so they could market it and promote it. So they felt a book written by a female should be targeted to females and it would sell better. But I've gotten an incredible amount of feedback from younger guys and older guys and many fathers who wanted to give it to their kids, their sons, because they thought if they could lose the word woman in the title, there was useful advice in it.
Oh, 100%.
What happens is there's so many advice books out there, but how many books about bad advice, things that we've been brought up to believe that just can hurt you? And so that was kind of the flip of what I wanted to do. It's basically a book about bad advice we're given and trying to turn it into the uncommon, but common sense we really need.
Do you know what it reminds me of, Bonnie? You being in the entertainment business. It reminds me of a book I read when I was in college. Henry Rogers wrote this book from Rogers & Cohen, the PR firm. He wrote a book called Rogers Rules for Success. And I remember the level of gravitas and knowledge. Well, you know what? Let's just dive into some of these. Your very first lie, you become Bonnie the Dream Killer. This idea of follow your dreams, that it should be DOA right now. Why are you killing people's dreams, Bonnie?
It's not that I want to kill people's dreams, but I think when you think about, where do our early dreams come from? Yeah. My mom is whispering something in my ear about who she thinks I should be when I grow up, or perhaps what she wanted to be and couldn't be. That was for me. My mother wanted me to be a lawyer because all her life she wanted to be a lawyer, and she really never made it to college. Russian immigrants come here and she didn't quite get that far. They are from fairy tales, cartoons, superhero movies, perhaps even a course at college. But what do we know about in that stage of life that gives us a window into what does that profession really mean? What does it take? What are the people like inside of it? Basically, following those dreams or getting addicted to those dreams is kind of nightmare advice because you're missing out on opportunities that might lead you to something that's really a true passion or skill set that will create a path for success for you. I'm a big believer that you can find your dream or dream job later in life when you've been exposed to enough to understand who you are and whether something is going to be the right fit. Now, it doesn't mean giving up a passion. I started out in photography. The jobs I had, I hated every single one, and it just didn't feel right. But it doesn't mean I gave up photography. I still love it. I still shoot, but the camera's not my boss. It did trip me into a profession that did become a dream job later in life. but it took a long time to understand that that's what fit me better. When you're a photographer, you're alone. It's a sole profession. When you're in media that has to do with images and imagery and telling bigger stories, not a story in a single image, you're with people. So, and I'm a people person. So
that's so interesting. Just that subtle difference in finding the things that you love in the new career. How did you make the jump? You were a photographer one day down at a TV station?
Yes. All right. So I started out, I was in a photojournalism major in college, and I took a couple jobs after school. The first one, I was working in a darkroom in a lovely Belgian photographer's studio in Boston. I would go in there, and for 8 hours a day, I was in the dark with my beautiful, what used to be manicured fingers in chemicals all day long.
Used to be.
Yeah. And so my fingers slowly turned yellow, orange, green. Didn't suit me really well. Then I graduated up into his commercial studio. I started taking photographs with him, but I was really handing him stuff. But it was the reality that commercial photography didn't do it for me because it was artificial lights, artificial flowers, artificial everything. And to me, my image of photography was Cartier-Bresson. Decisive moment. It was catching a candid image that told a story.
Almost like news photography, much more.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, yes. But even that, the next one was kind of chasing ambulances because that's the only way somebody who really had no experience get into photography. And that was basically sensationalism. Didn't like that either. So I went back to graduate school, and as a practicum to graduate, you did this kind of internship. So I was a freelance photographer working on a kid show. When I say freelance, I was working for free to get credits in a show called Infinity Factory. And I was youngest production assistant. I was taking all these photographs, and which was basically running around a studio following kids and a dog. One day they fired 3 production assistants. I don't remember why. And they just said to me, "You want a job?"
That's a bad day when you got to fire 3 production assistants on the same day.
Yeah. I have no idea. And I was probably too young and naive to investigate it, whether it was, the people running the show that were not particularly interested or supportive of younger people, or they did something bad. I do not know to this day. And I've looked back and said, why didn't I ask? But I think I was so hungry and so green. But as the youngest new production assistant on the show, everybody is assigned a cast member, and there are a whole bunch of kids. But because I was the newest, the youngest, the most green, I got the dog. So I was basically Winston, a sheepdog's dog keeper, which meant that on a union set where the crew is not going to pick up poop, I picked up poop. And that's how I started. But being in a studio with the lights, cameras, directors, I knew that day, this is where I wanted to be.
I want to skip ahead for just a moment, because in one of your other lies, you mentioned the fact that showing up to a job like that with a smile is a big, big part of what can make you successful. Everybody else doesn't want to pick up dog poop, Bonnie, but if you do that with a smile, that's going to pay dividends.
I'm a big believer in attitude, and having a positive attitude, just not grunting at grunt work, or if you can't get a yes from someone, or it's a dreary day, being positive, being optimistic, having a smile on your face most of the time that's genuine, makes other people want you to be around them. So it just kicks that door open a little bit more. And if you're in an interview situation and there's a very serious person who wants to be taken very seriously and has kind of a sullen look in their face, and you're both basically equal background, equal skills, equal number of jobs prior, you come in with some warmth, with a smile, with an attitude that says, I'll do anything, just let me in and I will help. I will be there, and we're going to have fun together. it just changes the way people look at you. They want you to be around, especially if it's real, if it's not put on for the interview.
Sure. Right. Well, yeah. And how many times have you heard people where, I don't know, I got fooled a couple times when I was hiring people where I thought, oh, this is going to be a great team player. But did you mention that this was your number one criteria, even before experience, was just being able to work with them?
Without doubt. I mean, I've been very, very lucky. I succeeded is because I had great people working with, for, and around me. It has nothing to do with me. I hire well. But one of what was important to me is that people didn't come in with their own agenda, that people knew how to collaborate, that people were not, it wasn't about me, or if something good happened, that they took the credit for it. But it was spreading the credit, because everything you do in the media business, there's nothing that's singular. It's all about teamwork. So for me, it was about building teams. So when I would interview people, so many people would come in trying to be impressed with, they wanted me impressed with what they did, their skill set, their credits, whatever it was. But I listened to see how often they gave other people credit. How often did they talk about a peer or someone they worked with or a family member with some sign of warmth? And that's what I would look at. It's not that I didn't look at a resume to see if they had some background that fit. But if I were looking at 5 and 1 very organically talked about the other people they worked with as a team, done deal.
Line number 2 that we're told that you write is know your worth. We hear this all the time. I've been doing this podcast for 15 years, Bonnie. What's wrong with know your worth?
There's nothing wrong with the conceit of know your worth, because we've been told over the years that unless you know your own worth, you're not going to get anywhere, etc. But there's a big difference between your personal worth. We are born with personal worth. Nobody should and can take that away from you. But on the job, you have to earn your worth. You are not entitled to anything. You have to be there, get up early, show up, stay late, and make others believe that you are worth basically molding, helping, developing, promoting. And you have to work at that worth. It's not a given that once you kick a door open because you show up and sit at your desk or make a few calls, that you should get promoted. You have to prove that you're worth that. You have to be willing to raise your hand and say, oh, I'll do that. You have to make sure you're not grunting at grunt work, that you're actually learning from and enjoying. And once you start showing people you're willing to work hard at something, they look at you as, okay, they're earning this. I want them around because they're going to do just about anything. They will succeed. So, and right now it's interesting. I've been doing a little research because I'm trying to write another op-ed to deal with kids getting out of college right now, understanding that you have to earn your worth. And some of the research I've been looking into literally is saying, I think there were like 8 out of 10 different people that were interviewed in corporations are very leery about hiring a Gen Z person right out of college right now. Because they do not believe they have a work ethic. Their assumption is, number one, they don't want to be in the office. They're going to fight to, work remotely. I'm not a big believer in that, because if you're not in the room, you're never going to be in the room. And there's a belief that they just don't understand starting out in a work world and having to earn that worth. And so I have a little bit more research to do, but it's really interesting that the rap that some of the Gen Zs are getting right now has to do with just a lack of motivation, a lack of reality, that you got to start somewhere. So just put in the effort, and wherever it is, show up with a smile and do what is asked.
It isn't lost on me how these two first lies that we talked about, Bonnie, really go together. I mean, you're familiar, I'm sure, with the work of Carol Dweck and this idea of a growth mentality. And man, when you show up, well, heck, you even talk about in the book your son working in the mailroom, which I laughed because mom wasn't going to make him the Nepo kid that Winston was the Nepo dog that got to be. But this idea that, hey, I'm in the mailroom, which gets me access into all these different people's offices. I get to meet the people. I get to interface with the people. Like, even though I'm the kid in the mailroom, there's so much I can learn from how this place operates.
Now, I'd be lying if I said that privately and quietly, he didn't whine and complain to me.
Well, that was me. I mean,
right. They're not letting me use my brain. They're making me pack boxes. Jess, what did you think when you took a job in the mailroom? He was wise enough to make friends. He was wise enough to basically wander around, drop off the mail, drop off the boxes. Obviously, this was when they still had snail mail, or more of it at least, and get to know people. Ask if he could do something. He too learned how to raise his hand and say, I'm here. You need somebody to do an errand? I'm around. So it worked for him. It works. In my mind, everyone I know or whose son or daughter had that attitude is doing incredibly well right now. It's those that just basically assume the world's going to be giving to them on a platter just because they went to college, got a decent degree. It's not happening, especially in this world right now. When you think about all the restructures that are going on, AI taking over so many jobs, companies being closed, restructured, things changing around us. You can't be that fussy. And if you try different things and try out different opportunities, it's just going to help you grow and be prepared to move in a variety of different directions, not stay on that singular path that you believe will get you somewhere.
This is the reason why I think it's also important to be in the office, Bonnie, is you see these things happen around you as well, where if you're remote, you don't see all the struggles somebody else is going through and learn from their mistake versus my own mistake. It's absolutely crazy. You mentioned a few of the stars that you worked with over time who have learned from these things. Here with this second lie, you pointed Kim Kardashian. Tell us, how does Kim Kardashian play into this second lie?
Kim and her mom. It's not just Kim. Kris taught her kids well. She taught them if they want something, they have to work hard at it, no matter who they are. What the most impressive thing that I've seen from Kim, other than obviously showing up, working hard, doing the show, never calling in sick, never doing anything that a well-known, popular influencer and celebrity would do. But Kim had a shot, Kim had a shot of doing Saturday Night Live, not that long ago. And Kim has not basically hosted that kind of show before, where you have to do straight to camera and you have to have a sense of humor and you're working with all of these incredibly talented people on the set. She worked her butt off preparing. She had things written and rewritten. She worked with the writers. She worked with a comic to help her get timing and tone on the comedy that she was going to do, which she had never done before. I have never seen somebody work that hard. That was so successful already. And she knocked it out of the park when she did the show.
Yeah, talk about leaning into it. I mean, I especially liked the skit she did with the dating game. Like, that was so damn funny.
Unbelievable. And then if you think about her then getting called back for the 50th anniversary show, she hosted once. She wasn't a personal friend of Lauren, but because she did so well, she got invited back with all of those who've been on it for a gazillion years.
That's right, because that's when the dating game one was, the 50th anniversary. Yes. I want to touch briefly on your third lie, which is have friends in high places. And you talk about really it's truth tellers all around you. But I want to focus on another relationship that really, it made me laugh, maybe Bonnie at your expense. Can you tell us about your relationship early on with Barry Diller?
Yeah, you won't be the first to laugh at my expense, but that's okay.
It seemed like a dirt road to hell.
So Barry basically bought USA and Sci-Fi in the mid 90s. And It was kind of in his heyday once he had been headed up Paramount and all these other entities. So major mogul, had been QVC, HSN, all of that stuff. And he bought us at the time. I think I was a vice president of development and original programming at USA. He gets us all together. And what ends up happening is he makes me first a general manager of Sci-Fi. I used to go to meetings and I was petrified of this man. And I would literally kind of, if I could, be under the table in these meetings, so petrified he would ask me a question. And then I started watching some people around me, one guy in particular named Steven, who used sense of humor with Barry, and Barry seemed to love it. So I slowly, over an 18-month period of time, started being able to respond to someone who scared the hell out of me. But as it turns out, that what I love about Barry to this day, and he's a mentor and he's now a friend, was that Barry is one of these guys that I call a challenging mentor. He is somebody that will test you and push you. He is, he offers a form of tough love, and he puts the tough into tough love, where he's going to scrutinize you till you truly learn how to think. Barry didn't let you get away with anything. You had to think out every single thing you did if you were going to get a yes from Barry to spend a penny, no less millions of dollars. So we were about to greenlight a show for Sci-Fi with a psychic. And Barry decided that he wasn't sure about this idea. Well, this happened over a long weekend. We did not have cell phones then. So it was on a computer that you had to sit by all weekend long waiting for his exchange. And his question to me was, Bonnie, if psychics are real, why would you put a psychic on a science fiction channel? And if they're not real, why the hell are we in business with him? Okay, Barry. So this was back and forth, going through conversations and reasoning. And
on a weekend
in December. And I remember it so clearly. And I finally was about to give in and say, okay, we're not going to have John Inwood on the show. But then I said, I'm trying one more thing. So my final argument to him, as he's trying to get me to articulate why I believed it should be on Sci-Fi, I said, Barry, whether you or I believe psychics are real are completely irrelevant, because psychics are in the eyes of a beholder. They are not fact. They are not fiction. There's something, let's just call it friction, because it cannot be proven. Therefore, it's perfect for science fiction. He wrote back, okay, your arguments win, go. So he forced you to think out anything you were about to do to try to get a yes, no matter what it took, till it was clear. Now, if the show had failed, he never would have said, I told you so, because he accepted my arguments. He would have said, fine, good try.
We were all on board.
Yeah. And so he taught me so much, even though it scared the hell out of me. And what for me these days is really problematic, that the younger kids going through corporate life right now don't get exposed to challenging mentors. No, unfortunately, and I'm careful about talking about it, but our world has gotten so woke or overly woke that we're not allowed to say stuff that will help people grow. We're not allowed to critique in the way we were critiqued. Now, was Barry at the time probably a little too tough? Without doubt. But what he said and how he believed in me and how he knew I was more capable than I believed I even was at certain things. It's only his pushing that got me there. And we can't offer that to kids these days because we have to be very careful. Otherwise, they just run to the HR departments. HR gives you a call saying, now, what did you tell him? You told him he was lousy at something. So I'm a big believer that challenging mentors, the tough love teachers, the sparring partners that are in the workplace are so valuable.
We should seek them out.
We should absolutely seek them out. And that's the way we're going to learn, because more often than not, they know that we are even more capable than we believe ourselves to be, because they watch us and they know and they see.
I feel that
stop believing that they're being abusive. They're not. They're trying to help us.
Well, that was exactly my next question, is that because I'm 100% on board. Our young stackers really need to know where the difference is between this challenging mentor, this challenging boss, and a toxic boss. Where do you see that line at then, Bonnie?
It's a very fine line, and there's a definite line. There should be no tolerance for abuse or toxic behavior. But you have to do your own work and your own homework to understand who you're dealing with. Who is this personality that's trying to teach me? Those who have come before you, who have worked with and for him, or where do they end up? Do they remain friends? Is the person still a mentor or a guide to them? It's taking a look at the big picture rather than the word that is said in that room. Tough love and mentoring can be done with kindness too. You can give tough information and advice to people in a kinder way. Barry was a different generation. I was lucky enough that I had someone earlier in my career back in Boston who was a little softer version than Michael, a softer version than Barry. His name was Michael, who got me ready for Barry. But my style is I've always been very, very honest with any and everybody who's worked with and for me, to the point where they could question me too. But it was always with, this is what I think you're not doing right, and this is what I think you need to do and why. And I would give them a period of time to think about it, to work on it, to try it. But it wasn't done with negativity. It was done with compassion. And I think probably, if not all, most genuinely believed that all I cared about was them, how they performed, how they grew, how they worked with the team so we could all succeed. It had nothing to do with me trying to control them.
More the betterment of me as the employee, making me a better employee through the tough love versus just being a screamer. Yeah. I've always been attracted to that too. Sure. But even, what's funny is that, and I know some of this is just TV, but like a Gordon Ramsay, where he's fighting with the restaurant owner, but it's because he loves the restaurant. He wants to see it succeed. Like, he's on their team, and that's why they're having this heated discussion and putting some heart behind it.
It's very true. And it's not to say it didn't make me crazy. Literally I took like boxing classes on the weekend. I had a boxing bag that had Diller's name. And every Saturday I would go and punch the hell out of this thing. And I would show up again on Monday and I'd be fine.
And look at you now. It's Bonnie Hammer, the Hammer, right?
Yes.
The book is The 15 Lies Women Are Told at Work and the Truth We Need to Succeed. As you've heard today, Stackers, is blunt. It is straightforward. There's so many tactical lessons here, and we just did stuff from mostly the first 2 chapters. It's been out for about the last 6 days. Bonnie, thank you so much for mentoring our Stackers today. I super appreciate your time.
I'm delighted. Love talking with you. Hope to do it again sometime.